From the low desert in beautiful Tempe, Arizona, this is Politics and the Past with Robert Ferguson, brought to you by the Center for American Institutions. Joining me today is South Dakota Jack. Good to see you. Haven't actually seen you on a podcast in a few weeks. I mean, since you did all those wonderful hosting duties on your own.
It's good to be back, and it's especially good to be back in a not host capacity, Rob. That's stressful.
Yeah, well, I don't know about stressful, but you got to be thinking the entire time. You can't tune out.
No, absolutely not.
And
Absolutely.
that is my instinct, is to tune out. My
Mhm.
wife will tell you that is my instinct when she's talking, is that it looks like I'm tuning out, but I tell her, "No, no, no, I'm thinking."
Yes. And that's what we're all doing when you're talking too, Rob. That's what we're doing.
I'm sure. Um, today's episode's very, very different, I think, than anything we've really done before. And, maybe it's sort of going against brand, given the fact that we are a politics podcast. Um, and that, like, so we talk about politics, and I guess our goal is to have people engage with politics. Yet today's episode's about the importance of engaging with other things and other things that may be in the world that, by focusing on them, I think on some ways it helps keep us grounded and gives us perspective when we're actually talking about politics. Like, Jack, one of the things that I've always appreciated since getting to know you is you have a really wide array of interests. Um, you're very knowledgeable of politics and about history, but because you've got so many other interests and there's so many other things that you do participate in and think about, I think that actually helps you keep kind of yourself grounded and maybe maintain a certain degree of distance and allow you to approach politics from a more analytical perspective than necessarily just being emotionally engaged in it. Um, so again, and I think that helps our conversations along quite a bit. Um, and this podcast generally, if anybody who's listened to it for a while should hopefully has picked up on this, even though we do tend to talk about politics every episode. That is the theme, after all, of the show. But we don't just focus on one type of politics. We talk a lot about state politics. We talk local politics. We talk policy issues. We talk a lot of political history. We talk politics around the world. And I think in this era where there's so much politics that just focuses on what happens in Washington, D.C., I don't think we ignore what happens in Washington, D.C., but because we focus on a whole variety of other things, maybe it helps us keep our perspective on where Washington D.C. is, where it's supposed to be, and not just overwhelming our senses all the time. Um, but today I want to even go further, separate even further from that. And Jack, I'd like you to talk a little bit about some of the other things that you do. And then maybe in the end, we can bring it around to how that helps you uh, keep perspective when you're talking about politics. So, Jack, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. You have so many interests, like I can't keep track of them. So, I don't know how you even have time for anything, let alone thinking about politics, and certainly not no time for doom scrolling. So,
No,
to
I
jump in.
recently deleted Instagram from my phone. If anybody out there is thinking about making that choice for themselves, deleting Instagram, deleting TikTok, whatever it is, absolutely make that choice. I have been liberated. It is so nice. I'm reading again in a way that I'd kind of stopped reading recreationally. I'm taking in things around me. It's fantastic. But I really appreciate that, Rob. And that it means a lot for you to sort of highlight my eclectic interests like that. Because I agree with you. I think that when we get so dialed into politics and national politics specifically, we lose sight of the fact that uh, politics is not an end unto itself. It's a means to other ends, and those other ends are informed by the other interests that we have. And so when I look at other interests that I have, first and foremost, it's the Minnesota Twins baseball team. who I've previously discussed on this podcast, are one of the most important things in my life. I've described it as I love my mom, and she's number one, but the Minnesota Twins are right up there. And so the Minnesota Twins baseball team, I love books about shipwrecks. Have you ever read Endurance by Alfred Langdon?
I have not read it, but I'm aware of it.
It's about Ernest Shackleton, and the Ernest Shackleton expedition that famously got lost. And Ernest Shackleton brought all of his men in from the very end of the earth, without losing a single one. I wish Jake was here. I know Jake's also read that book, and really loves that book. That and The Wager by David Grann is a great book. There's a new book that came out about the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, I think called The Gales of November, and I really want to read that. That and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Have you read much Marquez, Rob?
I've read the big ones.
I love. What do you think of Marquez?
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm a little bit higher on Marquez, I think, than you are.
Yeah, I'll be honest, and this is this is actually maybe the perfect conversation, is that when I was in my early 20s, I wasn't in academia. I was running a business. And while I was doing that, I was so focused on that that I missed out on probably 7 years of reading while I was doing that. And so since then, I feel like I've been in catch up mode. And what that's meant is I've read very little fiction since I was probably 19 years old. Most of what I've read is nonfiction. Again, trying to make up for that 7-year gap where I mean, I read a little bit, but I just wasn't reading like I thought I should have been. And so it's this every time I'm reading fiction in my head, I feel like, no, 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 you don't have time for this. You need to be reading nonfiction. Which is complete nonsense, of course. But that's sort of where my head's at. I picked up actually at the airport about 3 weeks ago. I picked up All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy, and I intend to read it, but I have not yet read it. Instead I read the 500-page book on Boris Johnson's premiership,
Well, those sound
instead.
like you know, the 500-page book on Boris Johnson's premiership might, in some ways, be a more. I'm trying to think of the right word. It might be a less stressful read than All the Pretty Horses, based on I've only read the Road, so my perception of Cormac McCarthy is only the Road, which is maybe the single most depressing book I've ever read in my life. Um, but yeah, so the Boris Johnson's premiership book might have been more lighthearted than anything by Cormac McCarthy.
I'm not sure. I actually think it was kind of weak. It was clearly dashed out.
Sure.
The book on
Yeah,
Boris Johnson. I mean, it was interesting at times, but I probably All the Pretty Horses would have been a better use of my time.
sure.
But I'm still a politics addict, even though I'm trying to bring perspective into this. Uh,
Yeah,
so
we tried to talk about not politics for 8 minutes, and we're already
Boris
talking about
Johnson.
Boris Johnson. Yeah. Um,
But no, let's talk a little bit. You know what? One of the things that you brought up Minnesota Twins baseball, and I think I think sports is one of those truly and it's not only American, don't get me wrong. Obviously, spectator are around the world. And people are hugely passionate about it. I was just in the UK. The Premiership is obviously like a type of addiction that even I don't really understand. And the one thing that's interesting about European sports and maybe global sports is there's an overlap with politics that doesn't truly exist in American sports. Like if you go to certain parts of Europe, there's a team that like that's the far right team. And then there's another team that's like that's the far left team. Going back into the Soviet era, the Dynamo was often the team of the secret, like of the security services, whereas like Spartak was the team of the trade unions. And so there were these, there's this political overlap. But in American sports, there really isn't that overlap. It really is community based. Maybe there's a little bit of over, I mean, and it's geographically based. So you grew up in South Dakota, and I just looked at a map recently that shows that South Dakota's all Twins fans, as far as I can tell.
South Dakota, you get a couple of out in the west side of South Dakota, you generally have some fans for Denver professional teams. The thing about it is, and I'm not saying that the Minnesota Twins are, a particularly good baseball team, but the Colorado Rockies have historically been just so gosh darn bad that nobody in their right mind would be a Colorado Rockies fan. And so the Minnesota Twins have taken over some more of that territory than even like the Vikings or the Timberwolves or something like that has managed to do. South Dakota is definitely Twins territory.
Hmm. Well, why am I drawing a blank on his name? The new president of baseball operations with the Rockies.
Oh, what is his name? I can't remember. Let's look this up.
Yeah, this needs to be
Colorado.
looked up.
Yeah.
It's the he was recently the president of football operations with the Cleveland Browns. And
Paul
I
De
know this is what
Podesta, the Moneyball guy.
yeah, Moneyball guy.
Yeah, the Moneyball guy. Um, who plays him in Moneyball? What's the name of the guy who plays him at
Jonah Hill.
Moneyball? Jonah Hill. That's right. I was going to say Jeremy Zoll, who's the Minnesota Twins president of baseball operations, and who's not Jonah Hill. Yeah, no, it's such a ridiculous organization. Um, because like you've got the thing about the Colorado Rockies, for those of you who don't know, is that the Colorado Rockies play at like Colorado is so high in elevation that baseballs that are hit in the Colorado Rockies stadium just go so much further. And so home runs at the Colorado Rockies stadium like they're just expanded. And so you would think that because the Colorado Rockies play you know, 70 games, 72 games at their stadium in this home run inducing atmosphere.
It's 81. It's 81. Jack.
Sorry, 81
It's 80.
games in this home run inducing atmosphere a year would try to build a lineup that prioritizes home runs or a home run heavy lineup, a power heavy lineup. Nope. The Colorado Rockies have signed players like Willie Castro and Edouard Julien, who are those are just the former Minnesota Twins elements of the Colorado Rockies lineup, and they've got others who are sort of light hitting, singles hitting, doubles hitting. They're just not. I don't know what they're doing. I
Well,
don't know what their plan is.
yeah. So, the other thing is that the Rockies have always struggled to maintain hefty. Nobody wants to pitch there,
Hmm.
right? Because you're going to give up a boatload of home runs, so nobody
Oh,
wants to pitch
absolutely.
there. It's bad for your market value.
Mhm.
But anyway, I mean, yeah. So you grew up as a Twins fan, and when you get upset and emotionally invested in the Minnesota Twins,
Which
Jack, I
I
know what
don't
your part is
recommend
going to be.
anybody do, by the way.
Sure. But, when you do that, you're getting emotionally upset and emotionally engaged in something
Mhm.
that has no overlap with your politics whatsoever. So there are a lot of people who have very different political values and who share your slightly insane Minnesota Twins values.
Only slightly insane Minnesota Twins values? That's a charitable description.
I mean, it push you to, it means that you have a different community
Hmm.
when you're watching sports. So, all right, who's your favorite Minnesota Twins player of all time? I have my favorite Minnesota Twins player. Who's
Of
yours?
all time, now that's a good question. My favorite Minnesota Twins player of all time, geez, is probably Byron Buxton, because he was like the Minnesota Twins player when I came to baseball fandom kind of late. I didn't really care for baseball when I was really until I was 11 or 12, and I could sort of engage with it on an intellectual level. And so Byron Buxton was the Minnesota Twins player at the time I was coming to baseball. He is one of the most amazing center fielders you've ever seen when he's healthy, which was the problem. And so Byron Buxton is that for me. But going back into history, you've got like Johan Santana, um, such a dynamic pitcher. Everyday Eddie Guardado, just because Everyday Eddie Guardado is the best nickname. He's also in Moneyball. The scene in Moneyball when the Minnesota Twins are destroying the Moneyball A's like chances at playoff victory. Everyday Eddie Guardado is the pitcher who throws the ball that then goes in for a strike that ends the Moneyball A's season. And so Everyday Eddie Guardado is fantastic. And then you've just got so many amazing Rod Carew. Like Rod Carew, I'm a big fan of. The Minnesota Twins has a long and healthy history of like single of prioritizing batting average and people who are just able to put the ball in play. And so people like Rod Carew and Luis Arraez, who used to be a Twins player, whose only skill is hitting singles. Can't not hit singles, can't really draw walks, can't defend. Whose only skill is hitting singles, but he hits singles better than anybody else on earth. And so, yeah, sorry, you asked for one player and I gave you like seven. But those are my seven great Minnesota Twins baseball players. Who's your favorite Twins player, Rob?
Kirby Puckett.
And you've got, how did I not say Kirby Puckett? I mean, that 91 World Series and Kirby Puckett in that 91 World Series, my God, you just,
So the 1990, I mean, this is just kind of maybe the 1991 playoffs are my earliest baseball games, are the
yeah.
1991 playoffs.
How old
I
were
would
you
have
at
been
that?
during the 91 playoffs. I guess I would have been 4.
Yeah.
So maybe 5, just kind of about to turn 5.
Mhm.
So I would have about my daughter's age now, actually. And I can tell you, she is just absolutely engaged in this baseball season. Not.
My God.
But I remember, I mean, clearly been a Blue Jays fan for a couple of years at that point because I know I was really emotionally invested in this, and I remember arguing with my dad about, like, why the heck we had Tom Candiotti starting game 6 against the Twins.
Yep.
And I said, and so I remember that argument, and that was in the ALCS, so clearly I knew something. That's, like, my earliest memory. But clearly I knew something about it, so I'd been engaged at least all season, if not the season before. Um, and so the Twins were the big bad Twins.
Oh yeah.
To me when I was a 4-year-old, almost 5-year. But just I really remember that 1991 ALCS and then the 91 World Series, of course. And I think we talked about it before on the podcast, but Jack Morris's jam in Game 7. Um, anyway, Twins baseball's great, and it's got a great iconic history, and it. Thing about baseball is we both know this. It's slow, but the tension builds. Right, that's the thing about baseball. Maybe what's great about. I remember when I was an undergraduate. My first year as an undergraduate was 2004. Which anybody who knows anything about baseball knows that that was the year that the Red Sox came back and beat the Yankees down 3-0, down 3-0 in the ALCS, and they came back. And I remember that entire playoffs, my friends and I would just play cards all night, and the baseball game would be on in the background. And we'd be playing cards because, like, baseball's slow. Even playoff baseball's a little slow. So you don't have to just lock in on baseball. You can kind of be doing something else. And then, but you kind of, if you're baseball fans, you're kind of like, okay, it's one thing if you're emotionally engaged, like one of the teams that you love is in it, then you're hanging on every pitch. But if it's not, you kind of like, you watch it, you're doing something else, you'd be reading a book even,
Oh yeah.
or whatever, but okay, there's 2 guys on base, there's 1 out, you know, part of the order's coming up. It's this, you kind of, okay, now we're locked in because
Absolutely.
tension builds, right?
It's a fantastic thing to watch while even you're doing homework. I'll do homework all the time and have the ball game on in the background. Uh,
I love it. It's my favorite background noise for work,
Absolutely. Mhm.
for doing work is baseball.
Absolutely.
Because again, like I don't have to lock in on it all the time. I just look up every every 10 or 11 minutes or so, see what's going on, and then, oh, okay, no, here I'm going to lock in now for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Um, and you compare that to football. When your team's playing football, you lock in for 4 hours,
Oh, yeah.
right? It's a different. You can't do that. Unfortunately, they only play once a week for a few months a year in football. It's not like it's 162 games a year like baseball.
Yeah.
But all right, so you're a Minnesota Twins fan, and that
Yeah.
takes up 3 hours a night, 162 nights a year,
Uh-huh.
where you're
Yep.
not thinking about politics. Uh, you're just thinking about getting runners aboard and hitting with runners in scoring position.
And hopefully the
Um,
bullpen doesn't
did
cry.
so let me ask this, Jack, was your dad a big baseball fan? Or your mom a big baseball fan?
My dad's a really big baseball fan. My mom's a big baseball fan too. I both my mom and my dad, but my dad especially, he was a Red Sox fan until the Red Sox traded away Mookie Betts, and so dad decided he was more of a Mookie Betts fan than a Red Sox fan, and so now
Oh,
his
so no, so he's a Dodgers fan now?
so now he'll say that he is a fan of all of the teams, that he is more of a fan of the players. But you know what that amounts to.
Well,
Where do all
he
the players
also does he also like, the Lakers and,
yeah. Well, really, I mean, for my family, it's not so much because my brother plays college baseball, and he's also a Dodgers fan, and my dad is now effectively a Dodgers fan. But what unites us all is a shared hatred of the New York Yankees. Fundamentally, we are an anti-Yankees household, and my mom, more than anything else, is a hatred of the Yankees. But it goes back further than that. My grandpa Tom is just like me, like one of the biggest Twins fans I know. My grandpa Tom and my grandma Darla, they listen to every Twins game on the radio. They don't even watch them on TV. That's too new age for Grandpa Tom. They listen to him on the radio. And so that's where a lot of my baseball fandom comes, not just from my mom and my dad, but also my Grandpa Tom.
that's fantastic. So I've got a neighbor who, he's from Detroit originally. He's in his early 70s now. He's from Detroit originally, and
Mhm.
he remembers vividly the 67 Detroit riots,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
right? But he remembers it through Tigers baseball. So they went to get his grandmother who lived not far from 12th Street, which was where the riot started. I think it was 12th Street. I'd have, yeah, I didn't prep for this. So I think it was 12th Street. Um, so they went down to get her. She lived in an apartment there, and they lived out in the burbs. And they went into the city and picked her up, and they brought her out. And all he remembers is her, and she would have been pretty old, pretty elderly at the time. Is her like with her ear right to the radio, listening to all the Tigers games and getting like really upset and emotionally invested in Tigers baseball. And this at a time when the city, Detroit is on fire,
Yeah.
right? Arguably the worst urban riot in American history, one that still shapes Detroit to this day. And yet, you know, people and he's not the only one, 'cause I think the Tigers had a really good team that year.
Yeah.
But I'd have to go back and there's probably a 30 for 30 on it, but that that that's how people engaged, was through Tigers baseball. So he remembers the Detroit riots, but he remembers it through Tigers baseball.
That's
And
that's
so sports is this uniquely American, and not uniquely American. And by any, I don't want to be, I'm Canadian. I mean, my God, you
yeah.
think we care about our sports in Canada too, but what's interesting with North American sports, particularly, is there's really no. It's not like there's no politics in sports. We know that there's politics in sports, right? Their college football right now is engaged in a major project in order to try to get a handle on things like NIL and the transfer portal. And it's being supported by the White House. And so there's no way to do that without there being some politics involved. I don't think this is a partisan issue, but anytime you've got politics involved, it becomes political. Like the Mitchell report,
Yeah.
right, in Congress, right? Um, it doesn't necessarily have to be political, like partisanly political, for it to have these political overtones. And then, of course, we look back, 7 or 8 years ago, when you had in the NFL players taking a knee during the national anthem, the Kaepernick thing, various other aspects of it. So I'm not saying, and then it happened in the NBA. Again, I don't want to say that politics doesn't overlap with sports, but it's not difficult to like be able to watch sports and not see it and kind of blind yourself to it. And it almost feels like if you're watching sports and you're getting upset politically by things that are happening, like relax,
You're missing the point.
right? And okay, some athlete might really, right, be really engaged in this political activity, and like, okay, fine, they are, but like that doesn't mean you can't like you can't respect what they do. You can't enjoy it. Uh, Now, there's some athletes that get carried away with it, and you're like, okay, but I'd like to see you interviewed where we're actually engaged with you as an athlete and as a person rather than just an activist. You neither here nor there. And that kind of affects how you see them after a while. But for the most part, your sports fandom and your politics are separate. There's lots of Democrats and lots of Republicans who love the New York Yankees, and they're all wrong.
Yes, absolutely. They're all and they should all be embarrassed of themselves. They all are desperate need of some soul searching.
Right. And and of course there's some places that are more blue than others, and some places that are more red than others, and so there's going to be a bit of an overlap fandom. But it shouldn't in North American sports, there's really nothing preventing you from being a fan of it. There's no politics preventing you from being a fan of a team. And that's pretty cool.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and that allows you to create the separate community that has practically nothing to do with your political perspectives.
You might even call it a little platoon.
Sure, sure. Well, and actually, just you brought up Burke. I mean, this is a big part of what Tocqueville talks about.
Yes.
Is that being engaged with your community in different ways, in non-political ways, is really important for the functioning of a republic. Whether it's a bowling team, or whether you're fans of the local sports club,
Yeah.
um, it's a way to do it. And it doesn't have to be sports. I mean, you and I happen to be sports fans, so that's what we're going to talk about. You tried to bring up fiction, and I killed that. So
No, absolutely. It could be a knitting circle, it could be a book club, it could be like, or it could be like your local like curling club or whatever. It's anything that you're interested in.
by the way, should only be current. As a guy from Alberta, I can tell you that like I was curling 4 days a week.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I
That's
wasn't very good at it.
yeah, that that's ridiculous. At some point, Canadians are gonna have to realize that it is just like a couple of rocks that you're pushing
It
at
is
one
okay.
another.
It is a sport.
Uh-huh.
It's and it's incredible. Like go out there and slide. You go out
Yeah.
there and do it.
You
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 go out
know
there
you
and do
know you know what this sounds like when I've talked to some, people who are on the ASU mock trial team, and the people on the ASU mock trial team refer to other mock trial participants as mockers. That's the term for mock trial team members, is a mocker, and so they'll say, "Yeah, that's my mocker buddy, Jeff." And I'll say, "Do you have any idea how ridiculous you sound right now? That's my mocker buddy, Jeff." And that was the thought I had when you said, "Go out there and slide." Not to make fun of your culture and heritage,
That's fine.
which
You're
in
allowed
many
to.
ways is my culture and heritage.
Yeah, exactly. You're from the northern you're from, like, the border of the Midwest and the West, man, and then
I
you're up
was
there.
gonna
You're
say,
you're from the
I
Great
know
Pla we're both from the Great Plain we're both from the Great
I'm
Plains.
aware that I have no room to speak here, and that there are any number of activities that, that I could be given crap for right now. I'm a big fisher. I love fishing. Like, it's the same sort of thing. You ever like, fishing and baseball, you go, you sit out on a dock, you put the baseball game on the radio, you dangle your line on the water. That's so beautiful. I know that it sounds corny and Norman Rockwell-ish, but it's just a beautiful time.
It is, and by the way, you're right, it is our unique it is our shared heritage. I mean, Minnesota is the home of American curling.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah, I mean, I hear you, like, I fished a bunch as a kid. I'd love to get back into it as an adult, but here's what I learned about fishing, is that when you're a kid and other people do the work for you, it's awesome.
Yeah, the worst part about fishing is when you actually catch a fish, and then you have to get the fish off the line, and then you have to put a new worm on the line, and then at some point you have to go and, like, you have to go fillet that fish, and it's just, the best part about fishing is not catching fish.
Well, no, what I can't stand is getting prepared to go fishing.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That's the
Putting
problem.
fish yeah,
Like,
like,
it
untangling
sucks.
fishing line,
Yeah,
miserable. Yeah.
sucks. Yeah, I mean, it was great when my grandpa did it when I was 6,
Mhm. Yeah.
but now that I'm almost 40 and I have to do it myself, that's no
Yeah.
fun. Were you ever a hunter, John?
I was never a really a hunter. I uh I grew up shooting guns on my grandpa's farm, but I never really got into hunting. It was mostly fishing. Um, we didn't have the thing about hunting back on grandpa's farm was all of his in northeastern South Dakota in the early to mid 1990s. You had just massive floods. The Jim River, which is the river up there, and then it's got, creeks and tributaries. It all flooded out. And so that's when Grandpa had to sell off all of his livestock because all of his pasture land flooded out. And so there is hunting up there. I'm not saying that there isn't, and there are certainly very big hunters up there. But fishing up there just because of all of the water that is around. Fishing up there is almost bigger, I would say, than hunting. And so I grew up definitely a fisherman more than a hunter.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, again, I enjoyed fishing quite a bit growing up because I didn't have to do the work. And
Mhm.
I've never hunted.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
it was early and cold.
Yeah.
Good. It's November. Why do I want to be out in the forest in November?
Yeah. No,
Right.
absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
listen, now, so I mean, I kind of get it if you just got to get out of the house,
Oh, yeah.
but you know,
There's a story about my great grandpa Arnie, who grew up. He's from Minnesota, northern Minnesota, and he would go hunting with some friends for like 30 years. They would go hunting. Great grandpa Arnie never once purchased ammunition for his shotgun. He would just go out with his unloaded shotgun and sit in the blind with his buddies and just chat. And in 30 years, he never bagged anything. And so it's not about hunting. It's just like being able to go spend time with your friends uh, and hang out.
oh, there's not, my understanding is like, unless you're a really serious hunter, the worst thing you can do on a hunting trip is actually shoot something.
Because then you've got to deal with it.
Yeah.
Then that's just a pain, dressing it, and yeah, it's a pain.
Follow it for like
Hmm.
3 miles,
Yeah.
right? And then you've got to like haul it out, which unless
Hmm.
you've got like a sled or a 4x4 is going to be pretty difficult.
Hmm.
And then quad is going to be pretty difficult. So yeah, no, no, thank you. I'm good. I can go to the store and get my meat.
Yeah.
And then usually like every year, at least when I lived in northern Alberta, there would always be like somebody would be like, I have like way too much deer. Do you want some? And I go,
Mhm.
sure,
Yeah.
because you've
Yep.
already processed it and it's in a Tupperware container.
Yeah. Well, that's my brother's girlfriend's family. They're very big into hunting, and they got a deer this year, and they sent it in, and they got venison, venison sticks, like beef sticks, but venison
Yeah.
sticks. And they had like the butcher screwed up. They were supposed to get like a variety of things, but nope, they just got a deer's worth of venison sticks, which is I don't know how many pounds. And so they said we have like two chest freezers full of like venison jerky and venison sticks. Would you like some? And we said great. And so now we have all
Yeah.
of this, yeah, and that's just how it is.
Right.
In the this is turning into like just our we're turn we're filling Garrison Keillor's role in the beauty of the northern Midwest and the Great Plains.
No, sure,
Yeah,
but it's I think it's just again the purpose is to sort of just talk about the things that we do that just kind of give us real meaning. And I've got kids and family, and of course that gives me meaning too. But you do need to. I do think you need to have other things, and because politics, especially in this era where politics is on our phones, and you can doom scroll for like 3.5, 4 hours a day, if not more. Politics will fill in those little gaps. And so I think you need to be kind of it's important for people who are interested in politics to sort of build other things into their time. And if you don't do it on purpose, then that the politics will fill in those gaps.
absolutely.
And again, we're a politics podcast. I want some politics to fill in the gap. I have a professional interest in that. But you want to make sure that summer's coming up here. And in Arizona, where we are, summer is like the worst time of the year where you want to be inside. But in most parts of the country, summer's amazing. And you want to be outside, you want to be doing other things. And that there are people who are going to work incredibly hard to try to get you to think about politics all the time. And it's important for your sanity and for your perspective to 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 have other things in your life. So for example, I can give you an example. And I mentioned I was just in the UK. One of the things that I think is happening is that retirees in particular are getting sucked into thinking of politics all the time, and that their world is being really shaped by politics. And they imagine what the world looks like through their phone or through their computer. And every person I met in the UK over the age of 65, all they wanted to do was talk to me about Trump when I was there. Nobody under the age of 65 brought him up once. And it's there's this, and again, if you allow politics to suck you in, it starts shaping everything about the world. And I was more than happy to chat about it and give my perspective and answers. But, you know, and try to hopefully might give people maybe a fuller perspective of what, the US is like, not through the lens of the BBC or Sky News or whatever. But it's just so important because it helps you see that, if you put your phone away, the world looks pretty amazing. I
Absolutely.
mean, like the bounty that we have, how decent people generally are, and how fun people generally is it's amazing.
I absolutely agree with you, Rob. Um, it's so important, and this is one of the things we really emphasize at the Politics and Leadership Club, sort of ironically, is to not talk about politics sometimes and to seek people out who disagree with you and find the things you agree on, not just the political things you agree on, but just your shared interests, your hobbies, your what you like doing. Maybe you both like Minnesota Twins baseball. Maybe you both enjoy weightlifting. Maybe you grew up in a similar part of the country. And so finding those things and just being friends with one another is something we really emphasize. And to your previous point about how politics can suck in all of that time, there was a point in my life a couple of years ago, um, and not even just a couple of years ago, really through the 2024 election, where that was me. You know, politics had sort of it was like a weed. It had gotten into every part of my life. I was spending a lot of time on Twitter. I was spending a lot of time listening to political podcasts and watching cable news. And I remember on the night of the 2024 election, before the results came in, it was like polls were closing in Kentucky, and I thought, you know, this needs to be it. Whoever wins this election, there's going to be 4 years of lots of political news, and I just can't do it anymore. And so I deleted Twitter from my phone. And what really helped me was the realization that there are a lot of people who have a financial interest in addicting you to politics. And, you know, those people are social media companies who try to, with their algorithms, want to infuriate you so you spend more time on those apps. And those people are politicians of all political ideologies who want to agitate you so you send them money. And realizing that and thinking it is, uh, you know, those people want me to be addicted to politics, and so I need to take a step back so I can reassert my own agency. That was an important realization for me.
No, I think that's critically important. Um, to realize that about yourself. That takes self-awareness, and that takes some and you were able to recognize that, I think, because you do have these other interests, and you were sort of going, hold on a second. I did stuff other than this before,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
This is actually one of the things that I said this maybe 4 years ago, and it's only more true now that um, this not intending to be a comment on policy or ideology or anything, but Trump sucks up every bit of oxygen in the room.
Yeah.
And there people who like him, people who hate him, it's chaos, it's a circus. And I don't know how anybody could keep their sanity if they were expected to cover politics for cable news since 2016.
Oh my god, I have no clue.
I mean, it's been a decade of this, and day in and day out, living and breathing on every tweet or True Social. I mean, it would be brutal. And you just can't keep your sanity. And so it's just important to kind of, again, have these other things, whether it's Minnesota Twins baseball or fishing. Um, and anyway, I said all of that to say this. I'm worried about ASU's O line.
Yeah.
I have concerns about their offensive line.
I in I
There's
share
no
that.
returning starters. We
What
have a four-way competition at quarterback.
Yeah, what the heck was up with Sam Levitt, and, like, were we able to do nothing to
He was just listen. I mean, he really great. He developed really well at Arizona State. I mean, this is a really good program. Kenny Dillingham's here. I mean, long
Mhm.
term, this is awesome. I mean, Arizona State has a way to go, but we don't have the collective money. We don't have anywhere near the kind of money that some of the other programs do. Arizona is an affluent state, but it's not Texas,
It
and
doesn't
Arizona State itself. A lot of affluent people in Arizona did not attend Arizona State. um like there's a big connection in this state to Arizona, to the university, but a lot of people who live here went to other universities in other parts of the country, and so their connection is with those other places. Like the amount of ridiculous Michigan flags I see everywhere, in Ohio State flags. I got into an argument with an Ohio State Uber driver, like an Uber driver, about, and he's a big Ohio State fan, and he's lived here for college is the one thing where you can kind of maintain your fandom. It's cool, like you can maintain your alma mater's fandom. It's a little different when you live in a place for 30 years and it's like, yeah, I'm still a Yankees fan. And it's like, really? Can you not
Mhm.
take the local team? You can still like the Yankees, but like, come on. But anyway, he was just, trashing Arizona State. And I was like, come on. And I was like, you do not, like, you cannot look at this through the lens of Ohio State. That's a different beast. But Arizona State, like the collective money and NIL money, is still, still needs to be improved. I think Dillingham and the athletic director are doing a pretty good job with it, but it's starting from a place that other universities don't have the problem. Like Texas Tech, although they didn't have a major kind of infrastructure, just the sheer volume of alumni with billions and billions of dollars. And same with UT Austin, we're able to infuse those programs with enormous amounts of money.
Yeah,
And so Arizona State, it's still got a little bit of ways to go. It's in politics, it's going to be a little more small donor than the major infusions. But the program's in a good place, and I think people really respect Kenny Dillingham.
I
So
agree. I think my one major gripe, and I on the whole think that Dillingham's done a really fantastic job. My one major gripe is we need to get a handle on those penalties. I was at too many games this past year where ASU was just giving up too many sloppy penalties, too many like sloppy offsides penalties, and to their detriment. I like there were a number of plays I can remember where the offensive line was able to execute really really beautifully, and then like somebody was out of position or there was some holding call and you're just like standing there like slapping your head thinking man like we've got to get a handle on this
well,
but
last year was a bit of an injuries problem, and
that's
that's why
true.
I'm worried. That's a little bit why I'm worried about the O line problem this year, and also the switch from Levitt, switch out of Levitt to I'm drawing a blank
Jeff
on the
Sims.
name of the backup quarterback last year. He
Jeff
played at
Sims,
Georgia
yeah.
Tech. He played at Georgia Tech. I can't remember his name, but very different styles of quarterbacks. So O line had to really adjust to the way that they played. But I mean, again, I think Arizona State's in a good place. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're a fan of Arizona State, we're Arizona
Mhm.
based podcast, donate to your local collective. Let's get this, donate to our collectives or whatever. I'd probably give a shout out to them, whatever they are. I don't
Mhm.
actually know what the name of the collective is, but
Can't remember off the top of my head.
um, it's I mean, you mentioned Minnesota Twins baseball, and I love baseball too, but my real love is college football sports.
College.
I just I it breaks me. I live and die on it, and yeah,
I don't think that I'm saying anything even out of like the mainstream when I say that college football is leaps and bounds better than professional football. That like I am a Green Bay Packers fan, but first and foremost, I am an Arizona State fan. And of course, the University of South Dakota Coyotes, go Yotes. Um, because that's where my parents went to school. But it's just the enthusiasm of the fans and the pace of the game is superior at the college level. I would assert than at the
I
professional one.
I wouldn't say that necessarily. I mean, listen, I would watch NFL football. The problem is I've got two little kids, and I it's one thing to give up one afternoon on the weekend for like 4 months of the year to football. I couldn't give up two per week.
That's fair.
So I had to pick between college and NFL, and so I picked college. But and one of the things that's interesting about that, and I grew up in Canada, so I never had like an NFL fandom. So like
Yeah.
I didn't have like a local team that to get excited about. So
Mhm.
but, my
You
2-year-old son, you
Raiders.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, if my 2-year-old son gets really into the Arizona Cardinals, I'll probably get into the Arizona Cardinals. But because I do love football. But
Mhm.
it's a yeah, I mean it's a in the fall, and we're doing these podcasts, unless like maybe this year with an election coming up, it'll be slightly different. But I want you to know that while we're talking about like midterm possibilities, I'm really on my phone scouting the next Georgia Bulldogs game or Arizona State University or ASU Sun Devils game. That's really what I'm doing.
Yeah. Have I ever told you about the time I met Patrick Mahomes?
No, no.
This is so Patrick Mahomes' dad, who is inconveniently also named Patrick Mahomes, former Minnesota Twins pitcher, played for the Sioux Falls Canaries independent league baseball team. The Canaries aren't like so for those of you who don't know how a lot about how baseball works, we've got the Major League Baseball, And then each Major League Baseball team has a series of minor league teams in their organization, which is where they develop players. And so you've got that sort of MLB infrastructure. And then to the side of that, and in many ways below that, you have independent league baseball teams, which are full of players who have either washed out of the major leagues or simply weren't good enough to stay in one of those MLB organizations. And the Sioux Falls Canaries is one of those. And I grew up going to Sioux Falls Canaries baseball games and watching truly dreadful baseball. Um, but one of the players who played for the Sioux Falls Canaries after he had washed out of the MLB was Patrick Mahomes Sr. And so I grew up sitting in the same section at Sioux Falls Canaries baseball games, like 20 seats away from a young Patrick Mahomes, who was, I forget how many years older than he is than I am, something like 8. And so I was, 2 or 3, and he was 10 or 11. And so I grew up, chasing baseballs really, with Patrick Mahomes. He won. He's faster than I am. And then a few years ago, they retired Patrick Mahomes Sr.'s number. And Patrick Mahomes Jr. was there. This was just before he became the phenom that he was to become. Um, and I got to meet him and chat with him. And I know that, like, as a not Chiefs fan, I'm supposed to hate the Chiefs dynasty. Darn, if he isn't the nicest guy.
I
Um,
I've never heard any, I've always just heard wonderful things about Pat
yeah.
Mahomes.
And so
And yeah,
that is,
Kansas City Chiefs fans are very proud of that. What a decent guy he is and how much he's reinvested into the community. I mean, you've got a women's soccer stadium in Kansas City. I believe it's the only place in North America that actually has a stadium built primarily for a women's professional team. And it
mhm,
was and Mahomes was a big driver.
yeah. It's yeah. And yeah, that's my my connection with Patrick Mahomes.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
great. Well, anyway, I think I'm gonna leave it there. I just,
Yeah.
again, this is, we didn't do a recording for Monday. We got a lot of really interesting ones coming up, some really intense ones coming up, and so this week was kind of a breather, and as part of that, I kinda wanted to just kinda emphasize summer's coming up, folks. Go out there and enjoy yourself. I know it's a midterm election year, and we're gonna focus on that here, but, it's baseball season. There's fish to be caught. I won't be catching any of them, but they are out there. So
I
I'm
won't
leaving
be.
them for all of you. I'm leaving them for all of you to catch. Um, and but just enjoy. And we love having you around. And we're gonna for the people listening, we got a really exciting. The year's gonna get really exciting here pretty fast. Um, the next week there's gonna be an episode that's just gonna it's gonna be pretty spectacular. So anyway, thanks for coming along this long. We really appreciate you. Be sure to like and subscribe. Again, this was a bit of a change of pace for everybody, but as Jack would say, embrace your little platoon, and we'll catch you soon.